Welcome back, everyone. It feels great to be back in the saddle and ready for a brand new year with brand new opportunities to give you the best board game recommendations out there. We ended last year with a big list of all of our favorite games from 2021, so why not start this year with a list of our most anticipated games of 2022? Even though it might not feel like it, there's still a ton to look forward to in the coming year. So if you're looking for a list of all the games that I'm really looking forward to, then might I suggest... Hi, I'm Alex and welcome to Might I Suggest a Game, a channel devoted to helping you find the perfect board game. Today we're going to be talking my most anticipated games of 2022, and this list is a doozy.
Watch out for that first step, it's a doozy!
Having to go through all the awesome releases that are scheduled for this year and narrow it down somehow was a gargantuan task, but I managed to get it down to 15 different games. Some of these games are Kickstarters from last year that haven't been fulfilled yet, some are Kickstarters from this year that haven't been funded yet, and some are just general releases that I'm really excited to try out. I tried to generally order this list from lightest to heaviest game, so if there's one in particular you're looking for, check in the description for the timestamps. And while you're there, don't forget to hit subscribe and that little bell button so you can get notified when I post new content. We hit 400 subscribers right before the new year, and I'm really looking forward to getting to know all the new people that'll subscribe this year. So join the party. Anyways, let's get to it. Will one of my most anticipated games of 2022 be the perfect game for you? Let's find out, shall we? The first two games on my list are there because they're kind of time sensitive. These two are Kickstarter projects that are either happening right now or are about to happen later in the month of January. I wanted to put these two first so you could hurry up and back them before their campaign ends. Anyways, the first one I'll talk about is Blazon from 25th Century Games. This game is a medieval themed card drafting, tableau building game about creating the perfect coat of arms to carry on your house's legacy. Now, first of all, this theme really drew me in. As someone who actually designed a coat of arms for my family, I thought this whole heraldry concept seemed really interesting. Plus, as per usual for 25th Century Games, the components and the production look amazing. The gameplay itself looks really nice and puzzly. It reminds me a little bit of Sagrada, a game that I really enjoy and has had a lot of staying power in my collection, so I really hope I can get a chance to play this one this year. This one's first on the list because when this video drops, the campaign will almost be over. So if Blazon sounds like something that you're really interested in, check out the link to the Kickstarter in the description below. The campaign goes until January 18th, so get on it. Speaking of January 18th, that's another big day for another game that I'm really looking forward to. It's Skate Summer from Pandasaurus Games. Skate Summer is a card combo making route building game where players shred their way around town, collecting bonuses that will make their skateboard trick combos even sicker. Once again, it was the theme that drew me into this one. I think skateboarding is a totally underutilized theme in board gaming, especially for a generation that was raised on Tony Hawk Pro Skater. I got a chance to play this one as a demo on Tabletopia with Danny and the Pandasaurus team, and I gotta say, I had a blast. There's a really interesting puzzle you have to figure out on which tricks to play and when, but the most exciting thing was the press your luck element. Deciding between trying to squeeze in one last trick before you land, or saving that trick for a better combo on the next run, really felt super thematic to me. I was super stoked to get an early play of this one, and it just made me even more excited for the game, which comes out on January 18th. I'll put a link to the Kickstarter down below in the description. This one's an insta-back for me, and I'm really looking forward to shredding some more when this one gets fulfilled. Now that we're out of the time-sensitive zone, let's talk a little bit about some of the lighter weight games that I'm excited for, like Flamecraft from Cardboard Alchemy. Flamecraft is an adorable family-weight game where players are flamekeepers, interacting with cute dragons and enhancing the town shops to gain the most reputation and become the master of Flamecraft. First of all, these tiny little dragons are adorable. I showed it to my wife and I thought she was gonna hyperventilate from cuteness overload. Another thing that I like about this one is it seems like a lighter weight execution of a worker placement game, which I'm always interested in trying out, because if I can use it as a gateway to teach my friends a little bit about worker placement, then we can eventually graduate into some of my favorite games. The production quality of this one also just looks amazing, and overall it just looks like a perfect game to bring out to game night for all ages. So I can't wait to try this one out, whether it be digitally or hopefully in person. The next one in this genre is a game called Transmissions from CrossCut Games. Transmissions is another cute family game where players are robots gathering energy to collect items and improve themselves in order to score the most points and win the game. Similar to Flamecraft, it seems like an entry-level worker placement game, plus it looks like it uses a sort of rondelle mechanic, which I think is underutilized and underappreciated. The production quality of this one looks off the charts, and the theme seems very whimsical and family-friendly. So overall, another game that I think would be fun for all ages, and I really hope to try this one out at some point during this year. Speaking of games that have high production quality, let's talk a little bit about Dog Park from Birdwood Games. Dog Park is a lovely point-to-point set collection game where players are dog walkers recruiting the best dogs for their kennel and then walking them in the park to earn the most reputation and become the best dog walker in the land. Now, I've heard this game being described as Wingspan for dogs. Would that make it Dogspan? Or Wing Dog? I don't know. As a self-proclaimed Wingspan superfan, personally, I mostly just see the similarities in the plethora of dog breeds included in the game and the high quality art, but still, I think this game has a lot of potential, so much so that I backed it on Kickstarter. It's got a lot of the same elements as games that I really enjoy, like the track movement in parks, for example. And overall, as a dog person, I'm stoked to see this one fulfilled and get to play it in person. Although if I get too antsy, I might try it on Tabletopia first. Speaking of things that have kept you occupied during the pandemic, other than walking your dog, there's nothing quite as peaceful as taking care of your houseplants. So let's talk about Verdant from Flatout Games. And if you needed a sign to buy yourself another houseplant, this is it. Verdant is a puzzly tableau builder where players try to create the coziest home by collecting and arranging houseplants. The first thing that drew me to this one was the fact that it's by Flatout Games, who also created Calico and Cascadia, two of the best puzzly games out there. And I've heard this one is their cousin, but with cards. I enjoyed both of those games and the abstract puzzles that they challenge you with, so I have high hopes for this one as well. Plus, the art is done by Beth Sobel, who did the art for Calico and Cascadia and also Wingspan, so you know this one's gonna look amazing. In some ways, it also looks a little bit lighter than its predecessors, which means it could work for a wider audience, which I'm always a fan of. Anyways, I can't wait to try this one out this year and see if it lives up to the hype. Now for a bit of a change of pace, let's talk a little bit about So You've Been Eaten by Ludicreations. So You've Been Eaten is a two-player clash between a giant space beast and a deep space miner. First off, I will say about this one, the title made me chuckle, so kudos to them for drawing me in. Second, that back and forth duel type of game always piques my interest, but it can be hit or miss for me, so I want to see what this game does differently. I like that it's asymmetrical, so you can always switch sides and try something else. In that way, it reminds me a little bit of Skulk Hollow or Raptor, both of which are good games, so I definitely want to try this as soon as the Kickstarter gets fulfilled, hopefully sometime this year. Okay, now let's move on to something a little bit more heavy. Let's talk about Theurgy from Ministry of Meeples. Is it Theurgy? Theurgy? Who knows? Either way, this is a tight area control game where players play as half-forgotten gods, vying for the affections and worship of the native peoples. I don't know too much about this game, and area control, again, can be kind of hit or miss for me, but I do love mythology, and I like the idea and the theme of making your own mythology. I think this game could be very RPG-y and have a lot of storytelling with the right group. At first blush, it reminds me a lot of Inish, but with a few more moving parts. I enjoyed that game, so I'm excited to play this one and see where it nets out for me. Now, area control games can be hit or miss for me, but deduction games I love. So let's talk about Scandaloh from Megacorpin Games. Scandaloh is a deduction game where each person plays an investigative journalist, competing to be the first to break the big story and bring a scandal to light. I'm excited for this one because it uses a lot of the same mechanics from another Megacorpin game that I love called Awkward Guests. I played that one a while back and I really enjoyed the way they approach deduction using something called the Brilliant Deck system. In this system, you'll use cards to gather information about the scandal, but it's just as much about the information that you share as it is about what information you conceal. I backed this one on Kickstarter last year and I'm really excited to get my pledge and get this heftier deduction game to the table. The game is afoot. Well, that's Sherlock, but you know, you get the idea. And what pairs better with an investigation than a bottle of wine? Or maybe a glass of whiskey? So with that in mind, let's talk about Distilled from Paverson Games. Distilled is an economic card game about managing your own distillery where players will compete to produce the world's most renowned spirits. Even though I'm nowhere near a whiskey connoisseur, this theme still seems really cool to me. I remember playing a brewing themed game called Microbrew a while back, but Distilled looked like it takes that theme to the next level. The whole thing seems really thematic, which is really my number one reason to try any of these games out. So I look forward to getting a chance to play this one in 2022. The next one is a little bit of an anomaly because I don't really know where it's going to rank on the light to heavy scale when it's all said and done. There's not a ton of information on this game yet, but from what I've heard, I'm really excited about it. It's Voices in My Head from Unexpected Games. Voices in My Head is a courtroom-style one versus many game where one player is the prosecutor and the rest of the players aren't just the defendant, they're aspects of his personality controlling his brain and ultimately his actions. When I found this one, I was really interested in it because I've never seen a theme like this before. Unexpected Games came out with the initiative last year, which also did a good job of making a play experience that I've never had before, and this game features the same designer, so I have high hopes for this one. Plus, who doesn't love a good courtroom drama?
She is entitled to half of the marital assets, or $11.395 million. Jordan fades back, swoosh, and that's the game! Nothing further, Your Honor.
Anyway, speaking of games where you're in someone's head, let me just read you the description of this new game called Pessoa from Pythagoras Games. Pessoa is a game about poetry where players are different entities, but also the same person. Dun dun dun! First of all, I love poetry. I even write a little bit of poetry myself. Shameless plug. Second of all, I love worker placement. And third of all, I just love the whole concept of this game. The listing describes the gameplay as going from the metaphysical space inside the poet's head to the physical spaces all around Lisbon. That to me just sounds fascinating. And although I haven't heard much about this one, being that it's an overseas publisher and all that, I'm still hooked on this one and I really need to find a way to get my hands on it. So if you know anybody at Pythagoras Games, put in a good word for me. Anyways, now let's get into some of the heavy stuff. I don't have a ton of heavy games in my collection, so not a lot of them made it on this list, but these next few were so exciting that I couldn't resist. So, let's talk about Ark Nova from Capstone Games. Ark Nova is a hefty zoo building game where you build enclosures, accommodate animals, and support conservation projects. Kinda like Zoo Tycoon on steroids. People are talking about this game as a replacement for Terraforming Mars. Now, I've played Terraforming Mars, I didn't love it as much as most people do, but I appreciated the concept and I enjoyed the gameplay. What sets Ark Nova apart for me is the theme. If I'm gonna play something this heavy, I really want to be into the theme. And for some reason, these zoo animals seem different enough and more compelling than the sci-fi theme, which has been done a lot. And before Terraforming Mars fans come for me, I understand that they were early adopters of the Mars theme that is pretty much outplayed at this point, in my opinion. But you know, who can fault me for wanting something new? So anyways, I'm looking forward to trying Ark Nova at some point and seeing how it stacks up. Anyway, speaking of animals, let's talk about Darwin's Journey from Thundergryph Games. Darwin's Journey is a heavier worker placement adventure where players travel with Charles Darwin, exploring the Galapagos, collecting information, and corresponding with museums for the advancement of all humankind. First off, the art and the components for this one look stunning. I know we talked about animals before, but this theme continues to fascinate me. Plus, the gameplay feels really thematic based on Charles Darwin's actual voyage. Like I said before, I don't usually get these heavy games to the table that often, so this might be just a convention play for me, but the game seems really well done, so I definitely want to try this one out. Anyways, the last game on my list of most anticipated games in 2022 is Arydia, The Paths We Dare Tread from Far Off Games. I talked about this one a little bit last year when the Kickstarter launched, but Arydia is a campaign-based role-playing board game where players will work together to defeat monsters, create memorable characters, and explore an ever-changing fantasy world. The first gold star for this one is that it's designed by Cody Miller, the designer of Xia Legends of a Drift system, which, spoiler alert, was my #1 game last year. Far Off Games has a history of really great production quality, so I'm really excited to see how Arydia turns out once it gets fulfilled from the Kickstarter. But the one thing that I think is the most compelling thing about this game is that it's touted as the first ever green legacy game. That means that after the campaign, it can be reset and reused for new players to try it out and experience it for the first time. I think that's a brilliant idea. I think it should have been done way earlier than this, but I hope that Arydia can be the trendsetter for many, many games to come. Either way, I'm excited to try this one out at some point this year, and I really hope it lives up to the hype. Thanks so much for sticking around for my most anticipated games of 2022. How did I do? Did I miss anything? What games are you looking forward to? Let me know what your most anticipated games are down below in the comments. I'm always excited to learn about new games and you guys have the best ideas, so keep them coming. Anyways, thanks so much for everyone who's supported this channel so far. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so I can keep growing this channel and keep helping you find the perfect board game. Once again, this has been a Might I Suggest a Game production, and I'm Alex, your board game sommelier, signing off.